All right, I will say good morning. Good morning. Let us begin. Baruch Hashem. A busy day ahead of us today. A lot to do, a lot to accomplish. Another beautiful week of learning in front of us. We begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's shir. To thank our Talmud Torah sponsors for the month of Sivan, Teri Czinn, for dedicating all the Shir Drushos this month with gratitude to Hashem as they welcome their fifth grandchild, Gavriel Amichai Czinn, as well as in memory of Steve's mother, Devorah, Basra, Yisroel Yoel, Shaindy and Avraham Kelman, and creation of the yahrzeit of Avram's father, Rephael Yechiel ben Avraham Kelman. We hope that in the merit of our Talmud Torah, all of the Neshamos and Aliyah and the families in the Chamra. With that, let us begin. I was going to give homework last night, but I decided, you know what, we're going to do? It's a shorter daf today, so we have a little bit more time in Meretz Hashem. So we're going to pick up exactly where we left off yesterday. We left off yesterday on Itmar, in the wide lines on TALMUD base 4b. We left off 2, 4, 5 lines in Itmar. Rav Huna Amar HaKol Lefi Mashe Gadar, Chia Barav Amar HaKol Lefi Dimei Kanam Bazal. So just to reorient ourselves a little bit, in the Mishnah, we were introduced to the concept that Halacha L'Maisa, if we have Ruvain living in an interior chutzner, Shimon is surrounding him on 3 sides. So when Shimon decides to put up a wall, right, a wall on 3 of the sides, Reuven is not obligated to participate in that wall if he didn't ask for it. Once we go ahead and we wall in the 4th side, then Rabbi Yossi says, once if Reuven, the interior guy, were to wall the 4th side, then halacha l'maisa, Reuven would be obligated to participate in all 4 sides. He'd be obligated to share in the cost. The shaila now becomes, what does it mean to share in the cost? What does that mean? So the Gemara says as follows. Machlokes. Rav Huna says, Hakol lefi mashe gadar. Ultimately, again, we go ahead and we look at the actual cost of the wall, and Reuven is obligated to go in and share in the actual cost. Chia Barav says, no. Hakol lefi dimei damin bezol. We look at what would be the cheapest wall to put up. What's the cheapest wall? And whatever the cheapest wall is, that's what Reuven has to share in. Not actual costs, but cheapest possible costs. Okay? So let's analyze this. So just to understand over here, the Gemara is operating under the presumption that halacha l'maisa, we are adopting the position of Rabbi Yossi. Namely, again, that for the first 3 walls, Reuven is not obligated to participate because he didn't put them up. Once, now again, we're also assuming now that we're talking about once Reuven puts up, right? Reuven's the interior guy. Once Reuven goes in and puts up the 4th wall, that clearly shows that he wants the walls, he likes the walls. That warrants then participation in all the previous 3 walls. Okay, now, what does it mean to participate? What does it mean to share in the costs? So again, machlokes, Rav Huna, actual cost, whatever the actual cost was of the 3 walls, Reuven is obligated to share in it. Chia Barav, no, not actual cost. But again, we look at what is the cheapest possible wall. That's what Reuven is obligated to share. So now let's analyze. So according to the Mishnah, Shimon is living on the exterior. Right? Shimon's 3 fields surround Reuven's 1 interior field, and Shimon puts up walls on all 3 sides. Ultimately, we do not obligate Reuven to participate in this. So once Reuven puts up a 4th wall, then we do obligate him to participate. Look at the end of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi says, "Im amad v'gadras revius migalger vasakol." Rabbi Yossi said, once Reuven, the interior guy, puts up the 4th wall, then ultimately we force him to share in the cost of all of the other 3 walls. So according to Rav Huna, who says that Reuven is obligated to share in the actual costs of the wall, this is the point of contention between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yossi. What's the machlokes? Here we go. Tanakam sabra kol lefi dimei kanam bezol. The Tanakam said is what's interesting. According to this approach, everyone is going to agree in principle that when Reuven puts up that 4th wall, that shows that what? He likes walls. And therefore we tell him to go ahead and participate in the cost of the previous 3 walls as well. And herein lies the point of contention between the Tanakam and Rabbi Yossi. Here we go. Tanakama savar hakol lefi dimei kanam bezol in umashe gadar lo. Rabbi Yossi savar hakol lefi mashe gadar. Shabbos says, listen to this. So therefore, the Gemara says, according to Rav Huna, this all makes sense. Because according to Rav Huna, this is the point of contention. The Tanna Kama holds that whereas now we're going to obligate Ruvain to pay, to participate in the 4 walls or in the other 3 walls, we're going to charge him, in accordance with what would be the cheapest possible wall alternative. A palm wall. On the other hand, Rabbi Yossi will say, no, we make him share in actual cost of the wall itself. But according to Chiyah Barav, who says to begin with, all you have to share is in the expense of the cheapest wall possible. So what is the nafkamina between Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yossi? Because again, if the Tanna Kama is going to hold that you don't even give him the value of a cheap wall, then what are you giving him at all? So maybe one possibility is that halacha l'maisa, maybe even if you don't assess Reuben to the value of the wall, there should be an obligation to pay the value of a watchman. Tanna Kama savar agar netira in d'mei kana bezolo. The Tanna Kama holds that Reuben should be obligated to pay at least the value of a watchman. Right, because he's getting security, and Rabbi Yossi holds, but again, the value of a wall he's not obligated to pay. Rabbi Yossi suffered to make kana bezol. Rabbi Yossi holds that Allah Chalamaysi, he has to pay the value of a cheap wall. The other possibility is Rishona Shniya Ushlishis Ikabenayu. Interesting. Maybe the other nafkamina bosai could be the value ultimately again of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd walls. Tanna Kama savar revius hu diyohivle. Tanna Kama holds that ultimately when Reuven only has to pay the value of the 4th wall, aval rishona ushniya ushlishis lo yohivle. But he does not have to share in the cost of the first 3. Rabbi Yossi savar rishona shniya ushlishis nami yohivle. On the other hand, Rabbi Yossi will hold that halacha l'maisa, he even has to pay the value of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd ones. All right, Ibai Sema, another possibility, makif v'nikaf ikabener. So we're just trying to figure out the machlokis in the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yossi. Maybe the machlokis over here is what? Who's putting up the 4th wall? Interesting, who's putting up the 4th wall? In other words, it doesn't make a difference if it is the interior or exterior guy. In our case, Reuven is the interior guy, Shimon is the exterior guy. Listen to this. Tanna Kama savar, taima da'amad nikif, de megalgin alav es hakol. Aval amad makif, eino nosin lo ela de mei revius. So listen to this. According to Tanna Kama, the halacha goes like this. It is only if Reuven, the interior guy, puts up the 4th wall. If Reuven, the interior guy, puts up the 4th wall, then what? Then it shows that he's benefiting from a walled and enclosed chutzner. If that's the case, we are now going to levy upon him the value of, or the part of the cost, half of the cost of the other 3 walls as well. But if it's Shimon, the exterior guy, who goes ahead and puts up the wall, then what? Then again, maybe Reuven wants, maybe Reuven doesn't want it. We'll make him share in the cost of the 4th wall, but that's it. Rabbi Yossi says, no. Once we put up that 4th wall, lo shna nikaf, v'lo shna makif, it doesn't make a difference if it was Reuven, the interior guy, Shimon, the exterior guy, im amad v'gadar megalgalin alav es hakol. Once we put up that 4th wall, and now Reuven has a fully enclosed chutzner, we make him share in the cost of the entire chutzner. Lishnachrina, another possibility, makif v'nikaf ikabenayu, Tanna Kama savar, im gadar makif esaravias nami yoivle. So Tanna Kama holds that even when Shimon, the exterior guy, puts up the 4th wall, Reuven, the interior guy, still has to share in the cost of the wall because he's benefiting from a fully enclosed chatzar. Rabbi Yossi savar im amad nikaf v'gadar esaravias hu diyoivle. And Rabbi Yossi, on the other hand, holds, no, it's only if Reuven, the interior guy, goes ahead and puts up the 4th wall. Why? Because when he does that, now he's showing clearly that he likes an enclosed chatzar. Avalim godar makif lo yoivle midi. But if it is Shimon, the exterior guy, who puts up the 4th wall, Reuven is not obligated to give anything. So Rabbi is saying, so what do we do, right? What's the halacha? So this is actually very interesting. It's actually the formulation of the Rambam in this is actually quite interesting. So we'll say, so in essence, we paskin like Rav Huna according to Rabbi Yossi. So the way we paskin is like this. If you have Reuven living in the interior field surrounded on 3 sides by Shimon, right? Shimon puts up 3 walls, right? 3 walls. So right, dividing between each of his 3 wheat fields and Reuven's field. He does it of his own volition, right? Now it turns out that Reuven now has a field that's enclosed on 3 sides. We don't, if Shimon did this on his own and Reuven didn't ask for it, Reuven didn't agree with it, we do not levy any fees upon Reuven. However, once that 4th side is enclosed, then halacha l'maisa, Reuven now has a fully enclosed field. That is beneficial. That is beneficial. And halacha l'maisa, we make Reuven share in the cost of all three sides. The Rambam paskins like Rav Huna that Reuven has to go ahead and pay actual cost. So let's say again, it costs Shimon, $500 a fence, so $1,500 on the three sides. Then halacha l'maisa, Reuven has to go ahead and share in that cost of $1,500 with Shimon. Now, I'll tell you where this is just like a little bit complicated, which is interesting, and we're not going to get into this, which is whose land is this being put up on, right? Because l'maisa, the Rambam, this was interesting, the Rambam discusses that this is presupposing that either when Reuven is going to share in the cost of the wall, either Shimon's conveying to him part ownership of the land itself, or it was built on jointly owned land. So in other words, you could have a case where Reuven said, I don't need the wall, right? But Lamaisa, you feel free to use part of my land. So the Rambam seems to say that that's when you obligate Reuven, the interior guy, to share in the cost of the wall, when he also has some financial stake on the land in which it is being built on. So the Rambam throws that in. Obviously, whenever we quote the Rambam right from the Gemara, we're obviously bypassing, right, many steps in the learning process. So so sometimes Rambam says things like, "Hey, where did he get that from?" But Lamais, that's because we're going from the Gemara to the Rambam. But again, but for our purposes, just for closure on the sugya, halacha l'maisa, first three walls that are put up, Reuven has no obligation to participate. Then we go ahead and we put up the fourth wall, right? Reuven puts up the fourth wall, Shimon puts up the fourth wall. Either way, Reuven is now the beneficiary of a fully enclosed field. He is obligated to share in the cost of the wall. What cost does he share in? Actual cost. Actual cost, Rafuna, in accordance with Rabbi Yossi. Incredible. All right, Rabbi, let's go back to top of Hamad Aleph. 5a, today's daf. Okay, so now we come to an interesting story over here. Runya Akfeira Vina. I just want to point out, some of these things sound interesting to us because in general, I think we often operate with the mindset that if I didn't ask for it, then why should I have to pay for it? So remember, halacha operates under a general concept that if someone does something that is objectively beneficial to you, that is, that serves some point, you do have to pay for that service even if you did not ask for it. I'll give you a simple example. If I pass by your house, right, I'm walking by, Reuven's house, and I say, Reuven, wow, that front lawn is a little bit overgrown. I say, I have a couple of minutes on a Sunday afternoon. I bring over my tractor mower. It's one thing I've always wanted, a tractor mower. I would never use it, but it does seem like a relaxing thing to do, right? I was thinking, can you imagine taking a tractor mower with a beer on I don't know if those two go together. It's probably not a good idea, operating heavy machinery with but it does seem like sometimes you see people on that. They seem so relaxed. Put on your headphones. Any event, okay, so nice. I go ahead and I walk by Reuven's field and I see that Reuven's field is overgrown. So I decide to go and mow his lawn. And I say, okay, that'll be $50. Reuven says, so we're going to see these sugyas, but Reuven is obligated to pay me for mowing his lawn. He didn't ask me. Reuven has a contract with a landscaper, right? He didn't ask me. I provided a service. Now again, what fee I can get for that service is a different discussion. Right, that's a different discussion, right? But lamaisa, when I provide an objective service for someone, I have the ability to go ahead and ask for money for that service. So the Gemara says as follows. So that's the principle that's driving Reuven enclosed on three sides, and ultimately, again, going ahead and Shimon putting up the walls, and then Reuven being left with part of the bill for those walls. Yes, he didn't ask for it, but Lamaisa, he is benefiting from it. So also, let's go back to the top of Hamad Aleph. Runya, Akfe Ravina me Abu Rochester. Was a very interesting case. Runya, that's the guy's name. Runya was in the middle, right? He was the field in the middle, and he was surrounded by Ravina on four sides, right? So he was totally enclosed by Ravina. Amrle, so Ravina, so now, Ravina put up a wall. So now Runya had a totally enclosed field. So Amalei Havli Kama Degadri. So Ravina said, listen, the cost, let's just for argument's sake, the cost of the wall was $2,000. Go ahead and pay me $2,000. I'm sorry, or $1,000. Share with me the cost, the actual cost of the wall. Lo Yoevle. Runya said, no, I didn't ask for it. I'm not paying for it. Havli Lefi Kanim Bizol. Okay, fine. You don't want to pay me for the actual wall. Pay me half of the value had it been like one of these reed walls or palm walls. This is the cheapest wall possible. So the Gemara said, Yolo Yoevle. Said, no. So Runya said, no, I didn't ask for it. I'm not paying for it. Havli Agar Nitirusa. Okay, so at least give me the value of like, had we hired a guy to watch the field? Right? In other words, had we hired someone just to be a watchman in the field, go ahead and pay me half of that value. Because at the end of the day, what are you getting from this? You are getting security. Right? So give me half of the value of a security guard for however long we'd have in the field. So Runya said no. So I was like, again, Runya is not being a jerk. Runya is just simply saying, I didn't ask for it. And therefore, I'm not participating in it. Fine, so watch this. So one day Runya was picking the dates off his palm tree. So Amar Leila Arise, Zil Shakal Mine Kibur Dahini. So Ravina said to his sharecropper, go into Runya's field and go ahead and take a cluster of dates. Rashi says in the second short line, Kibura Dahini Eshkol Shel Tmarim Shel Runya Ubifanav. Go ahead and take a cluster of dates from right in front of Runya. Literally, he's harvesting his dates. Go in there and take a cluster of dates. Okay, so what happened? So ultimately, again, so now Ravina sharecropper goes in to presume, it sounds like to steal a cluster of dates. So Rama Beikala, Runya begins to yell at the sharecropper. What are you doing? Right, those are my dates. Stop taking my dates. So the Gemara says, Amalei. So Ravina said, you see? Gali daitech denecha lach lo yehe ela iza ba'alma. So listen to this. So now, watch this. So Ravina said to Runya, you see, this whole time I thought maybe you didn't want to participate in any of the cost of the fence of the wall because you didn't care about your field. Clearly, you do care about your field, right? V'haraya, what's the proof to that? The proof to that is that halacha l'maisa, when my sharecropper came in there, so right, what happened? You're yelling at him. So we'll say, so listen to this. So therefore again, lo yehe ela iza ba'alma. So at least you need at least a basic amount of protection in your field. From what? From animals. In other words, doesn't the fact that your field is walled, doesn't it at least protect it from a goat coming in to graze? So the Gemara says, Lo yehe ela iza ba'alma, mi lo bay netirusa. Don't you need at least basic protection? Goat protection. I would say basic goat protection. Everyone needs it, right? So the mice, again, don't you need basic goat protection in your field to prevent the animals from coming in and eating your dates? Amarle iza ba'alma lachlu yebaya. No, Runya says, I don't need a wall for goats. What do you need a wall? What do you need for goats? As soon as you yell at them, they go away. Right? In other words, goats are easily scared away. Just, I don't need a wall. Just raise your voice. So Ravina says, Amrle velo gavra ba'is demechala. You need a guy. In other words, I got it. So, but you would still need someone to yell at the goats. You do need a goat yeller, right? So it says, so if you need a goat yeller, in other words, so lemaisa, that's still the point that Ravina is trying. What's the point that Ravina is trying to prove to Runya? Is that you need some level of security for your field, and security costs money. So all he's trying to point out to Runya is the fact that you are enclosed on every side is of objective benefit and is a financial savings to you. So therefore, all I'm asking is for you to participate in this field or in this wall to the degree that halacha l'maisa, you are benefiting from it. So the Gemara says. So it turns out, I will say they could not work this out. So finally they came to Rava for a din Torah. So Rava said, Zil paisi b'may defayis v'ilo di'inin Allah dina krafuna lidirav yosi. So Rava says to Runya like this: listen, Runya, you're getting off easy. you're getting off easy. If all Ravina is asking for you is either, again, the cost of the 50% of the cost of a cheap wall, like a palm wall, or 50% of the cost of a watchman, or 50% of the cost of a gold yeller, you are getting off easy. You're getting off easy. Here's my suggestion to you. Settle up with him now. If not, if you want me to issue a psak din, the psak din is going to be like Rav Huna in accordance with Rabbi Yossi, which we just saw before. I will say. And what's halacha Rav Huna according to Rabbi Yossi? That when you have that fourth wall, the interior guy is obligated to share in 50% of actual cost. So if Ravina is willing to cut a deal with you for 50% of a much lower amount, my suggestion to you is take it. Take it. If not, I have no choice but to paskin for you, like Rav Huna Rabbi Yossi. Incredible. Runya. So I'll say another story. This is a really interesting story. Runya, Zabin Ara Ametzra de Ravina. So we'll say we actually saw this when we had this sugya about a week and a half, right? Last Shabbos. So we'll say the din of bar metzra. What's the din of bar metzra? That halacha l'maisa, when a property goes for sale, the neighbors have rights of first refusal. That's the din of the bar metzra. And I will say, and halacha l'maisa, if someone other than the neighbor goes ahead and purchases the property, the neighbor actually has the right to really force them to turn it over to them. That's the din of the bar metzra. So watch this. So Runya Zabin Ara Amitzra de Ravina. Runya bought a property that was adjacent to one of Ravina's properties. And apparently, again, Ravina did not get the right to first refusal. Sav Ravina l'saluki misham. Din of the bar metzra, mishum din of the bar metzra. So Ravina was going to go to Beis Din and have Runya removed from the field based on the halacha bar metzra. Right? Again, remember, halacha bar metzra says that, again, remember, a neighbor has right of first refusal. Right? So Lamaisa, again, so Ravina was going to go to Beis Din to have Runya removed. So what says incredible. I'm going to Rav Safra, Rav Yeva, Ravina. So apparently, Ravina brought this case before Rav Safra. So I will say, sounds like over here, he didn't initiate a din Torah, rather he went to Rav Safra almost to go in and talk this out. And Rav Safra said to him like this, Amri, so he says, so Rav Safra, Breder Rav Yeva, said to Ravina, Amri Inshi, people often say, Arba litzala, Arba litzlala. People pay 4 for the hide and 4 for the tanner. What does that mean? So we'll say, look at Rashi. This is actually very interesting. So Rashi says over here, Arba litzara v'dal litzlala. So actually Rashi has a number of different girsos on this, what this means. We're just going to go with the first part of it. He says, Ani shamati, Sala ratzan ani, utsala ratzan ashir, tekach amralo, Arba kikaro srichan l'ratzan ani, l'malachas beso liyom, kimoshe srichan le'esha. So we'll say, that, we're going to leave aside the first part of Rashi. Later on, Rashi says over here that what it means is like this. Runya was a shoemaker. So how did Runya make his living? He bought a hide from person A. He then gave it to person B to tan it. And then afterwards he would fashion it into shoes and go ahead and sell it. So we'll say, so there's a very low profit margin on that. Why? Because he's spending so much money in procuring the hide, tanning the hide. So that's what it literally means. You have to pay 4 to this one, 4 to this one. By the time you actually sell off the object, there's so little left in profit. So little left in profit. Shabbos say, so what does this mean? Take a look at the next line of Rashi. This is incredible. So what Rav Safra was telling Ravina was the following. V'zeh anihu. This guy Runya is very poor. V'tzarech lo hasada leparnasa. Shabbos say, so here's what's interesting. For a guy like Runya, agriculture, having a field, represented the opportunity to make a parnasa. Right, because in his field, in his shoemaking field, apparently the overhead was so high that he barely eked out a living. So now Runya wanted to secure a parcel of land with which to go ahead and make some additional parnasa. Ukashem sha'ata omerlo histalek me'alai b'din debar metzra mishum va'asisa hayasher va'atov. Shabbos said, this is incredible. Remember again, when we had Dina Debar Metzra, why is it that the neighbor has right of first refusal on the parcel of land? Why is that? So the Gemara darshans from the pasuk, Va'asisa hayashar v'hatov. Va'asisa v'hayashar v'hatov. So ultimately, again, so I will say, so what does it mean? What does it mean by Va'asisa v'hayashar v'hatov? You have to do that which is correct and that which is just in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I will say that's the din of Bar Metzra. In other words, there's no mitzvah d'oraisa that says the neighbor gets the right to first refusal. So I will say, so where does that halacha come from? The halacha comes from a general concept of doing the right thing. Doing the right thing. It makes sense to offer the property to the neighbor before you go ahead and you offer it to anyone else. So listen to this, Rabbi. This is so beautiful. So therefore, Rav Safra was saying to Ravina, in this case, Kach ani omer lecha asay yashar v'tov le'inei zeh v'al tesalkeu. So this is so beautiful, Rabbi was saying. So Rav Safra was saying to Ravina, you want to claim that you have first rights to this land, din and bar mitzvah, based on the pasuk v'asisa yashar v'tov. Do that which is just and that which is right. So Rav Safra says to Ravina, in this case, think about it. Maybe what's right is letting Runya have it. Because obviously Runya was able to swing a deal with this piece of land because Runya is very poor. So for him to be able to get a piece of property is not pashit. He got one. Maybe this will give him a little bit extra parnasa, pull him out of the clutches of poverty, and give a shot at a normal life. See how beautiful this is? So Ravina, you're claiming that you should have a right to the land based on va'asisa hayashar va'atov. Do that which is right in the eyes of Hashem. Maybe in this case, doing what's right means what? Letting Runya have the piece of land. You know what I'm saying? There's the expression of the fifth chelik of Shulchan Aruch. Right? What's the fifth chelik of Shulchan Aruch? So again, there are four chalakim of Shulchan Aruch. The fifth chelik of Shulchan Aruch also means the stuff that's not written, but that you understand from the other four chalakim what you're supposed to do. There are things in Yiddishkeit, I will say, that I know the Torah tells me what to do. They're explicit in halacha, they're black and white, they're written. And then there are other things that you understand are the Ratzon Hashem, even if they're not explicitly written. You know, the Ramchal, I've quoted this many times. The Ramchal in Mesilas Yesharim says, what is the definition of a chassid? Right? What's the definition of a chassid? Right? David Schwartz's favorite sefer is Mesilas Yesharim. And now maybe it's the Piyashatz now. But hey, by the way, so Ramchal says, what is a chassid? So what is incredible? A chassid is someone who is able to intuit the Ratzon Hashem based on Torah mitzvahs. So in other words, the Chassid says, okay, I see based on Torah mitzvahs, the Kodesh Baruch Hu likes A. Right? So for example, right? So Kodesh Baruch Hu likes Chesed. So the Chassid says, okay, now that I know that Kodesh Baruch Hu loves Chesed, I'm going to find additional ways, even non-obligatory ways, to go ahead and become a Baal Chesed. So that's what a Chassid is. A Chassid understands what the Ratzon Hashem is, and based on his understanding of the Ratzon Hashem, Ratzon Hashem, goes ahead and acts in additional ways that he knows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would want him to do. That's a Chassid. He goes above and beyond. So that's what Rav Safra is telling Ravina over here. I got it. You're right. You have a halachic right. You absolutely have a halachic right to go ahead and get Runya out of that field. You do. Dina Devar Metzra. But maybe in this case, Vasisa Yashav Atov, maybe over here, the Midas Chasidus. The Midas Chasidus is not to exercise your legal right. As well say, sometimes being a Chassid means not being right. Right? Sometimes being a Chassid means not exercising your entitlements, but instead going a little bit above and beyond because you recognize that that's the Ratzon Hashem. So you see over here, Ravina, you're fine. You're just fine. You don't need this field. Right? Runya does. Asisa v'ayashar tov means, leave it. I will say, it's one of the most nuanced pieces, one of the most beautiful pieces in Yiddishkeit. To become a chassid, to understand that sometimes something may be, this manifests itself in a variety of ways. Sometimes something may be legal, but it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And sometimes you may have a legal entitlement, it doesn't mean you should exercise it. Sometimes something may be mutter, but it doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. So, and this is saying sometimes v'asisa hayashar v'atov, becoming a chassid requires us to think a little bit and to recognize what would HaKadosh Baruch Hu want me to do in this scenario. And I will say this is the way the Shulchan Aruch begins. The Baal HaTanya writes that the Shulchan Aruch begins with the phrase Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid. I place HaKadosh Baruch Hu before me at all times. The Baal HaTanya writes, opening section of Tanya, the Baal HaTanya writes, why Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid? The most important thing in life is God awareness. When you recognize that you live in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and that He's with you all the time. So God awareness creates a different plane of living. On the most basic level, before I do something, I ask myself, what would HaKadosh Baruch Hu want me to do in this situation? How would HaKadosh Baruch Hu want me to act? How would HaKadosh Baruch Hu want me to behave? And I must say, if I could get used to living that way with a constant state of God awareness, Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samid, then suddenly I'm living a life of Asisa Yashar V'Atov, and suddenly everything I do is informed by the recognition that I live in the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Incredible. Mishnah, says the Mishnah, Kosel Chazer Shenafal. We'll say great case here. All great. But by the way, no? I'm not even going to take like approval ratings on Bava Basra. Ridiculous, right? Absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Kosel chatzer shenafal mechayv v'noso livnoso. So we'll say, so here we go. So you have a coastal, you have a wall and a chazal. So we'll say, so up until now we've been focusing on the obligation to build a wall. Now we're transitioning to a different discussion over here. We've built a wall. And now what happens? It comes down. And we'll say, by the way, this progression is incredibly metaphorical. And we'll say, we spend a lot of times building things, which is incredible. And then what happens? Sometimes those things fall down. And too often in life, when the things we build fall down, what do? Say, "Ay, woe is me. Woe is me." So watch the Mishnah says, something you built fell down. What's the halacha? Mechayvin oso livnoso. I just want to tell you something. All of life can be summed up in that one line of the Mishnah. When it happens to you in life, that stuff that you built has fallen down, what's the halacha? What's the halacha l'maisa? What's the hashkafa l'maisa? Mechayvin oso livnoso. You are obligated to go ahead. And rebuild it. That is the yisod in life, I will say. That is the yisod in life. Kosa chatzer shenafal. You built a wall in your chatzer. You built something in your life, and now it fell down. Mechayvin oso livnoso. Rebuild it. The rest, that's the life mission. The rest, okay, now we have to get into the details. So we'll say, so what's the halacha? How much do you have to build? So we'll say, so now we're presupposing over here, going back to our first Mishnah, that remember, we're talking about over here, our case, Reuven and Shimon, our neighbors in the same chatzar. Again, everything is good, they get along great, it's beautiful. They built a joint wall. So remember again, I will say, what's the type of wall in a chatzar? What do you have? Where's the wall built? Right? Wall is built on jointly owned property, right? Or I should say, not jointly, it's the wrong word. They each contribute half of the width of the wall and half of the cost of the wall. So that's kind of what we're talking about over here. The wall fell down. So now the halacha is we obligate them to rebuild it ad arba amos. Ultimately, again, halacha l'maisa up until dalar amos. So we saw this before. Let's say the wall was 10 amos high. So it was 10 amos high. You can't obligate the parties to rebuild a 10 amma wall. Right? Instead, what do you obligate them to do? Up to dalar amos. Now, that makes a lot of sense. Remember, what's the purpose of this wall? Hezek re'iyah, visual damage. So remember, a wall of 4 amos is approximately 6 feet. So that halacha determines that is tall enough. That's a privacy fence. That's tall enough to go ahead and prevent any hezek re'iyah. Okay? So even if the wall was, now again, obviously if they agree to rebuild it taller, fantastic. But you can't obligate anyone to do anything more than dalar amos. Furthermore, so listen now, watch this. So let's say now, watch this. Let's say now, halacha l'maisa. So they rebuild it, and Reuven says, Shimon, you never paid me. So I'll say the halacha is, the chazaka is Shimon paid, right? Because you're going to say, since this is a jointly owned wall, B'pashtus, neither is really going to undertake, and they're both obligated, and neither is going to undertake until he has the funds secured from the other. So if Reuven claims that Shimon did not pay his share, the onus is on Reuven to prove that, which essentially is hamotzi mechaver alav haraya, right? The assumption is that Shimon has paid his share. If Reuven claims that he didn't, then halacha l'maisa, the burden of proof is upon Reuven. Fine. The Gemara says, listen to this. Midalat amos ulamala in mechayvin also. So the Gemara says, however, halacha l'maisa. So we'll say, so now same case, right? So the wall fell down. The wall was 10 amos, or for that matter, the wall was dalar amos. But now Reuven says, you know what? Let's build a higher wall. Shimon says, I don't want to rebuild it higher, either it wasn't higher before, or whatever it was. Shimon can't be obligated. Shimon can't be compelled to build it higher than dalar amos. So now, if Reuven wants to build up higher than dalar amos, that's his prerogative. Now watch this. So let's play this out. Let's say Reuven says, fine, I'm going to build it up to 10, right? I'm going to build it up to 10 amos. So Shimon says, listen, I'll participate financially up to dalar amos, but the other 10 amos, but the other 6 amos, that's on you. I have nothing to do with that. Fine. So Reuven builds a beautiful 10 amma wall. All right, so now watch this. So this is great. So what does Reuven do? So what does Shimon do? Samach lo kosel achar. So we'll say, so now Shimon, remember, Shimon was happy with the dalar amma wall. Shimon didn't need anything more. So Shimon says like this, now there is this 10 amma wall sitting between their chatzeros. So Shimon says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build a parallel wall in my chatzar and put a little thatched roof on top of that, right? I've got a little pergola now, a sukkah. I've got, it's nice, it's right, it's beautiful, it'll be fantastic. So again, so we'll say, so in that case, Samachol Kosel, even though, again, Shimon did not yet put a roof on top of it, we force Shimon to pay for the additional height of the shared partnership wall. I would say, what's the logic? Because once Shimon, now remember again, so just let's play this out again, right? Reuven and Shimon share a chazar together. They have a division wall, right? A Hezekiah wall. The wall falls down. They're both obligated to rebuild it, so they rebuild it. Reuven says, I'd like to add on another 6 amos to make it a 10 amma wall. Shimon says, not interested. I mean, go ahead, do it if you want, but I'm not financially participating. I'll participate up till Dalar Amos. Fine. Reuven builds the additional 6 amos. Shimon sees, I know if I could build myself a nice little pergola, sukkah, whatever it is. He erects a parallel 10 amma wall in his own chutzner. Right? He's going to put a little nice roof on it, right? The retractable roof for the sukkah is going to be fantastic. So what's the halacha? Once Shimon builds that parallel wall, then we force him to share in the additional amount for the extension from 6 amos to 10 amos of the shared partnership wall. Why? Because once he's showing that he's benefiting from that additional height, then halacha l'maisa he has to share in the cost. Furthermore, again, I will say the chazaka is that Shimon did not pay for the additional part of the wall until he brings proof that he did. So in other words, if Ruvain's makes claims against Shimon and Beis Din that Shimon, you did not pay for the additional 6 amos, right? The additional 6 amos of our shared partnership wall, then ultimately, again, the halacha sides with Ruvain, and Shimon has to prove that he did pay. Again, the logic of that being is that since this initially was not an obligatory wall, therefore the assumption is that Shimon did not pay for it, and therefore, again, when Ruvain claims payment from Shimon, and Shimon claims, no, I paid, the burden of proof is upon Shimon. Incredible. Both say, let's go. The Gemara. Both say, this opens up a fascinating sugya. Gemara. Amrish Lakish. Hakovei azman lechavero, v'amar lo paraticha b'soch zmani. So Rish Lakish says as follows. Rish Lakish says, this is great. Reuven lends Shimon money. And he goes ahead and he says to Shimon, pay me back in a year. Okay. And what happens? So what happens? Now a year comes, and Shimon claims, I paid you back already. In fact, I paid you back early. So both say, so now the shaila is a borrower ever believed to claim that he paid back early? So Rish Lakish says, if he claims this, Eino Naaman, he's not believed. Why? Paid back early. Halavai people should pay back their debts on time, let alone pay early, not believed. So what is incredible. So again, obviously we're talking about a case over here. If Shimon could bring witnesses that he paid back, so there's nothing to talk about. We're talking about over here where again Lamaisi has competing claims, right? So Reuven shows up at Shimon's house at the year anniversary of the loan to collect the loan. Shimon says, I paid back and I paid you back early. Rish Lakish says that claim is not even believed in halacha. In halacha, the claim that I went ahead and paid back early is not even believed. So Abaye Rava Amitarvayu Ovid Inshi Depara Begos Mane. Zerno Abaye and Rava say no. People sometimes do pay back early. Why do both say? The Gemara says Zimnin de Misramu Leizuze Amar Ezel Ifrei, because sometimes a person has some extra cash, and the borrower says, you know what? Let me pay it back right now. I'm in days. It's nice. It's such like. It's a warm feeling that sweeps over you, and it's a short Amud days. Right? The Gemara says Kiechi Delo Litrachan. We'll say sometimes a person has extra cash on them, and they say, you know what, let me pay back now while I have the money. So it shouldn't be a tircha on me, it shouldn't be a tircha on the... We'll say, now, I just want to point out something. It's interesting because, like in today, in the contemporary loan market, right, for example, you have this sometimes with mortgages, right, where actually there is what is it they call, like a prepayment penalty, right? If you try to pay off your mortgage early, right, that there's actually like a penalty. Now understand the reason, what's the distinction? What's the distinction between, again, contemporary interest? Right? So obviously, again, so if you're from the bank's perspective, the bank doesn't want you paying off your mortgage early because then they're going to lose out on the interest. So understand, obviously, we're talking over here in non-interest bearing loans, right? Because again, it's between two Jews. So again, I will say, so a fascinating machlokes. Are we believed, is the borrower believed to say that he paid back early? Did he pay back early? So Rish Lakish, absolutely not. Abaye and Rava Abai and Rava, absolutely, it happens. A person has some extra money, figures, let me just get this done. So I will say, it's actually very interesting. I also think it might be like a deeper machlokes in human psychology, which is, when do people deal with their problems? When do people deal with their problems? So it's almost as if Reish Lakish is saying, when do people deal with their problems? When do people deal with their problems? When they have to. When they have to. Right? When they have to. When I have absolutely no choice but to deal with it. You see this, Rahman al-Islam, you see this in the realm of addictions. Right? Rahman al-Islam, lo aleinu. When do people often deal with their addictions? When? Right? When they hit rock bottom. When they've lost everything. When there is no choice but to deal with it, now I deal with it. Because again, I lost it. I have no choice but to deal with it. So it's almost as if Reish Lakish is saying that in general, it's human nature. It's not just a din in addictions, right? It's a din in life. When do I deal with my problems? When I have to. When do I repay my debts? When do I pay my debts? When I have to. And Abai and Rava say, no, people could be proactive. You don't have to wait until the debt is due to pay it back. You don't have to wait until the problem blows up in your face to finally deal with it. It is possible to live a life of proactivity. Fundamental machlokes will say, not just in paying back debts, but I will say, don't we all struggle with this? Gavriel, is there any person here today that doesn't have some glaring problem in their life that they are not actively dealing with? Whether it's a personal issue that I'm dealing with, whether it's a family issue that I'm dealing with, a relationship issue that I'm dealing with, a financial issue that I'm dealing with, all of us have glaring life problems, and I'm just not dealing with it. Why not? Oh, maybe I'm the only person here. Okay, fine. Right? Why not? Because I don't have to yet. Right? So why deal with something now if I don't have to yet? I'll say Machlokes Abai and Rava. Incredible. All right, let's go ahead. Let's see how we pass again. So the Gemara says, Tanan. Let's analyze. So Tanan, Becheskas Shenasan Achi Yaviraya. So we'll say, what did we learn in our Mishnah? Our Mishnah said that I will say, remember again, let's deal with the first case. First case in the Mishnah was, I have a wall, right? Shared partnership wall that fell down. So now again, the obligation is to rebuild it. So what's Talach? What did the Mishnah say? The Mishnah says that the chazaka is that both parties have paid their share. And if, let's say, Reuven wants to claim that Shimon didn't pay, the obligation is upon Reuven to prove that claim. So what's the case? Heichidami, what's the case? So if Shimon says to Reuven, come on, I paid you and it became due. What's the shayla? So pshita, bechaskas shenasan. So obviously I will say if he's claiming that he paid when the money was due, then of course the halacha is on the side of Shimon. Because remember again, this is an obligation, it's jointly owned. Why would we think that Shimon didn't do his part? Rather, they must be talking about a case where Reuven challenges Shimon, you didn't pay, and Shimon says, not only did I pay, I paid you early. So we'll say, what do you see from here? Yeah, what does the Mishnah say? Shimon is believed. So what do you see from here? Alma, Ovid inish tepare b'soch zmanei. So we'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that halacha l'maisa, people do pay their debts even early. So the Gemara says, shayni hachan, no. A wall is different. Why? The way a wall works is interesting. I guess the way you would normally pay for a wall is it was common to pay for a wall for every layer of bricks. Right? In other words, it wasn't just the pshat that you would pay for a wall necessarily at the end of the completion of the task, but at every layer of bricks already, that's part of the payment for the wall. So therefore, again, essentially what the Gemara is answering is, there's no really such thing as what you would claim as early payment for the wall, because payment is due kind of at every increment of the process. Okay? Tashma. So let's look at the end of the Mishnah. What did the end of the Mishnah say? In a case where, let's say again, remember, Reuven and Shimon are rebuilding the wall. Reuven wants to build up to 10 ames. Shimon only wants 4. So what's halacha? You can't force Shimon to pay for the additional 6 ames. But what happens if Shimon then erects a parallel wall of 10 ames? Then what's halacha? Then we make Shimon share in the cost of the additional 6 ames of height of the partnership wall. So the Gemara says, and yet the halacha is in that case that the chazaka is that Shimon did not pay, and therefore if Reuven claims, Shimon, you didn't pay, and Shimon says, I did pay, the burden of proof is upon Shimon in that case. So the Gemara says, hey Chidami, what's the case? If Shimon said, I paid you early, amai lo. So ultimately, if he said I paid you on time, if he said I paid you on time, then amai lo. Why would Shimon not be believed? So the Gemara says, Ella lav da amrle praticha b'soch zmani. Rather, Rabbi say, what does it have to be? Rabbi say, it has to be that halacha l'maisa. Because Rabbi say, just understand something. When a person says I paid my debt on time, the assumption is we assume people pay their debts. And therefore, Rabbi say, a person says I paid my debt on time, it's almost as if there's a hamotzi mechaver alav haraya situation. So if the claim over here that Shimon is making is I paid my debt on time, so why wouldn't it be believed? So when it says, rather it must be that Shimon's saying I paid you early. What do you see from here? Alma lo avid inish the party begos mane. So I'll say, what do you see from here? You see from here that a person doesn't pay his debt early. To which the Gemara says, no. Shiny hacha, this case is different. Why? The amar miyemar the mechayvi li rabbanan. Rabbi said this would be a case. The reason we wouldn't believe about an early payment in this case is because in this case we're dealing with a wall of additional height above and beyond the dalar amas. So in this case, it's not pashit that Shimon is going to have to share in the cost of this wall at all. So because it's not pasha that he has to share in the cost of the wall at all, then halacha l'maisa, again, there's really no claim that he's going to make that I paid it early. Okay, so let's see weiter. Rapapa, Raguna Dre Yoshua, Avdi Ka'abaye, Rava Bar Mori, Avdi Ka'abaye Rava, Mar Bar Abashi, Avid Keresh Lakish. So Rabbi say, so now you see what happened over here. These different rabbanim paskin like different people. So again, Rabbi say on one hand you have Papa Yeshua paskin like Abaye and Rava. That's what the Rabbi say. Abaye and Rava said people do pay their debts early. Therefore, again, this would be a feasible claim. And yet Rav Ashi Avi Keresh Lakish. And Rav Ashi went ahead and paskin like Keresh Lakish. So we'll say, meaning what? That people don't pay their debts early. People don't pay their debts early. Rabbi say, what does the Gemara say? The Halchasa, Keresh Lakish. Halacha l'maisa we pass like Keresh Lakish. Rabbi say people don't pay their debts early. Rabbi say, now what this means is that if a person makes a claim that I paid my debt and I paid my debt early, we don't even listen to that claim. In our eyes, that claim is false. It's false. People don't pay their debts early. Now Rabbi say, now watch how the Gemara illustrates this. Va'afilu miyasmi. This is true even from orphans. I was saying, what does this mean? Take a look at Rashi. Imeis halova besok smano, go vechova min ha'isomim below shavua, v'lo chayshinan dilman pari. I will say, watch this case. Reuven lent Shimon $1,000. He lent him $1,000 for a year. Okay? Now I will say, what happens? 6 months after the debt, Shimon dies. Now he has children. So his children now inherit. So I will say, so now, obviously, Reuven has a claim against the estate. What's the general halacha, Bosai? The general halacha is that whenever you want to collect from Yisomim, what do you need to do? Shavua, you need to swear. In this case, Bosai, Reuven doesn't have to take an oath. Why not? Because since Shimon died before the due date of the debt, we know with certainty that what? He didn't pay it back. And because he didn't pay it back, therefore Reuven the creditor has the ability to collect from the estate, halacha l'maisa, even without a shvua. Incredible. I want to say that in other words, so you see we're clearly paskin like Reish Lakish, people don't pay their debts back early. So now look in the Gemara. V'afilu miyasmi. V'afagav da'amar mar habali parmenich som lo yifar el mishvua. Even though God was saying in general, what's the halacha? When you come to collect from the property of Yisomim, you can only collect with a shvua, with an oath. Chazaka, so we'll say in this case, this is going to be different. So we'll say it's fascinating. This may be the one case where you could collect from orphan property without a shvua. Chazaka, lo avid inish tepara begos mane. The chazaka is a person does not go ahead and pay back a debt early. So therefore, because Shimon, the debtor, the borrower, died before the loan was due, therefore halacha l'maisa, the chazaka is he did not pay back. And because that's chazaka that he didn't pay back, therefore what? Therefore halacha l'maisa, Reuven the creditor can collect from the Yisomim even without a shvua. So Rabbi say, this is the conclusion of the Gemara, that halacha l'maisa we paskin like Reish Lakish, that a person does not go ahead and pay back their debt early. Incredible. And Rabbi say, if that is true halacha l'maisa, then unfortunately, tragically, it seems like the Gemara is saying it is also true hashkafa l'maisa, that human nature is we do not deal with our problems until we are forced to. We do not deal with our issues until they become unignorable. Is that a word? Unignorable? Yeah, unignorable, inignorable. You can no longer ignore them, right? That is the only time when ultimately we go ahead and we deal with our problems. But remember, just because the halacha is this way, and just because human nature is this way, doesn't mean we actually have to live this way. We have a choice to be proactive in the way that we confront our issues. And I will say, we're going to end off today's year. Our very beloved Gavriel Amichai Czinn is getting married today. It's also his birthday. It's incredible, by the way, getting married on your birthday. What an incredible zuchus. So Rabbi Yoni, on behalf of the entire shir, we wish you an incredible mazel tov. B'shah tov matzlachas, as you stand under the chuppah today with the orah, and the bracha we give you. The bracha, we give you many brachas. We give you every single bracha. But the best bracha we can give you is be proactive in dealing with your life issues. That if there is an issue that comes up in your marriage, or there's an issue that comes up in your personal life, or there's an issue that comes up in any area of your life, don't wait to deal with it until you have no choice. But go ahead and deal with things as you see them becoming issues. And everybody see now this ties into, remember in yesterday's daf, we had the halacha by the Beis HaKnesses, right? You're not allowed to go ahead and deconstruct the shul until you build a new one. What was the exception? If you see a crack in the edifice. See, I will say, because what is the halacha saying? When you see a crack, you know that if you don't deal with that crack, what's going to happen? The edifice is going to come tumbling down. So the halacha says, you have the right, when you see a crack, deconstruct it. Do what you have to do now before the whole thing comes falling down on your head. I will say it's incredible. It's the same theme at the end of yesterday's daf, right? No, I should say the beginning of yesterday's daf, which was really the end of Friday's daf. We're a little bit off, right? So it's incredible to see the bookends between the end of Friday's daf and the end of Sunday's daf. The theme is the same. When you see a crack in the edifice, when you see that there's a problem, bring down the building in a controlled demolition, so that you could go ahead and rebuild something beautiful, as opposed to waiting till that building topples down on you. Right? End of today's daf. People don't deal with their problems until they have to. People don't repay their debts until they have to. But you don't have to live that way. You could choose to be proactive. You could choose to jump on things, to jump on problems, to deal with issues before they blow up and before they come tumbling down. So Chassan, our bracha to Hashem, when you see a crack, deal with it right then and there. When a problem comes up, a challenge comes up, or you see something brewing, don't wait until it becomes a storm, but find the courage to tackle issues even before they become issues. To have a beautiful, blissful, and bracha-filled life. And to celebrate our simchas together, halavai with Am Yisrael in a proper matzav with Besoros Tovos, Am Yisrael with our hostages returned, with our soldiers safe, in a rebuilt Yerushalayim here of Yameinu. Amen.